Hi, friends. Welcome back. So, headline: The Grindr Super Bowl. Gay dating app saw influx of users during Republican National Convention. And I guess there were so many users on this thing that they crashed the app. It was in Milwaukee. And if you don't know, Milwaukee is the Cream City. So, not making that up, Cream City. Welcome back to the channel, guys. And I actually wanted to start with this. I thought it's a funny story. I have no idea the truth of whether or not Grindr went out. Were there a lot of users on Grindr at the Republican National Convention? I don't know. If you're gay and Republican, please let me know if that was your experience. Was it hard to get the app working because there's just so many people on the thing? But I will say that people do hook up at these things. So if you ever wanted to know what people do at conventions, that's what they do. I'm starting with this one, guys, because I honestly feel like for many people out there, they see Donald Trump as being essentially the way and your ticket to get a girlfriend. And I get that, right? It's a lot of stress these days. It's tough to find someone good to date. And also, too, I know with conservative people that they're against gay people, against trans, these kind of things. And I want to tell you the truth, guys. You have it all wrong. In fact, you should be pro-gay. Now, let me tell you why you should be pro-gay. If you're a straight dude, I'm a straight dude. I want as many gay people in the world as possible, right? Why? That means more ladies for me. You know the song "Two Girls for Every Boy," right? That's exactly what I want, right? And I'll give you a simple example of what it's like to have more ladies than you can handle. When I was in college, I used to go to the ballroom dancing club / meeting class, and it would be like 30, 40 females, women, and like 5 dudes. And I would always have someone to dance with, not the dudes, obviously the ladies. But my point being is don't necessarily be anti-gay when that just essentially just means more ladies for you. I'm starting with this because, like I mentioned, the Donald Trump stuff is all about trying to get you a girlfriend. It's essentially trying to get a better job, right? For many people, this is the pitch that Trump tries to make to you is if you vote for me, I'm going to bring back the factory jobs. And your life is going to be great, and you're going to have a girlfriend. He doesn't say that, but that's kind of what we're implying here. And I want to address some things to sort of, for those of you who are interested in a bit of education of sort of how we got to this point. Why is Donald Trump so popular? This kind of thing among that kind of group. Why, especially young single men who don't have girlfriends are into Donald Trump. Why is that? A lot of it has to do with that. In the past, it was a lot easier to get a job. It just was. In the past, it was more affordable to buy a home, right? In the past, it was easier to live in the USA. That's the reality. Now, I'm going to put some caveats to this, and I want to explain sort of like trying to go back, trying to jump in the time machine. It's probably not going to happen. And this is sort of why I call things like, say, Mr. Trump a con. Why? Because it's just he's trying to promise you things that he can't deliver. Let me give you a simple example, guys. So if you go back to, say, 1950, right? So say after World War II, the population of USA was like 141 million people, something like that, right? And today, the population of USA is like around 340 million people. So like we've doubled population since 1950, since after World War II. Now, let me just ask a simple question. Let's say there are more desirable places to live than others. Would you agree? Would you agree that some neighborhoods are nicer than others? Some cities are nicer than others. There are some places that people would rather live. So a simple example, let's say you love skiing and you want to live, around Denver area because you like skiing, and that's a popular thing to do. Or let's say you like the mountains and you like the ocean. Maybe you want to live in Seattle. Maybe you like the beaches. You want to go to California. Maybe you want to live in the big city, live in Manhattan. Maybe you want to go down to Miami because you like the beaches down there, etc. Right? There's some places that are desirable, and I'm talking about obviously expensive places, but there's a reason why people want to go to these because there's certain things that are attractive to people. The more people in the country, like we have double the population in 1950, the more competitive, the more demand, the more expensive things are going to get by the sheer population. Okay. The other thing you want to be thinking about as well, in the past, the U.S. economy, the population grew much, much faster than it is today, right? Today, we're actually looking at about, I don't know, it depends which numbers you look at, but we'll just say 50 years from now, something like that. we may go in, this is what the projections are, in population decline. The USA will no longer be growing in population. I'm telling you guys these things because sometimes people like to, say, oh, it's because we're not Christian anymore is why the US is in decline, and that's why it's harder for everything. Like I just gave you a very, very basic way to think about it, is just think about population. There's just more people. There is more competition. There are more people, and the USA did not get bigger. I mean, geography-wise, Montana didn't get bigger. Iowa didn't get bigger, right? The country didn't get bigger. We have more people, so there's more competition for more desirable places to live. It's tougher these days, right? So in the past, if you needed to get a certain kind of job done, there are less people, less competition, and there was a lot more growth back then. Now we have more people and less growth. Right? Do you understand? It's a different world. Moreover, too, in today's world, there's less places in terms of USA. There's less places to break ground and less places to develop. Like America's a developed country, so it's not like we just build new cities and have new construction and booming stuff. Back when the country's, I'm talking 1950, but if you want to go back to 1900 or whatever, before there's just more opportunity to build new stuff. There's a lot of untouched land. Now it's much tougher, right? Everything's developed. And so well, the other thing that you have to understand as well, historically speaking, after World War II, okay, all the other countries in the world were really heavily involved in the war on their homeland, right? The USA was not attacked on the main continent. You could talk about being attacked in Hawaii, but I think at that time that wasn't even a state of the USA, but you could say that was, part of USA. But it wasn't necessarily on the mainland, and it wasn't like anyone was bombing LA or New York or Chicago, right? The USA was not attacked. And so because Tokyo was bombed, Germany was bombed, talking about Japan, right? Japan and Germany were bombed. England was bombed, right? Many countries, China had a major battles in there, and also too, then they went through the Cultural Revolution, it's a whole other thing. But other countries, faced battles and fights on their homeland, and they were in the rebuilding stage. Europe was destroyed and been rebuilt, and also parts of Asia. You can talk about Korea as well. The thing is that USA actually became very profitable during that period. This is during the Marshall Plan, because they were shipping actually Hollywood movies around the world. A lot of people don't know that. Cultural exports. They were shipping food around the world, shipping all kinds of goods and products, right? So the USA is booming during this period, say 50s and 60s, etc. What happens though coming in today, right? I just want to set the kind of the groundwork here. Coming in today, where we are now, a lot of countries make a lot of things, right? Not just USA. Back then, right, USA was like this crazy factory, and it seemed like everyone could get a job at any time. But today, it's different. USA has a lot more competition. So when people say, USA is in decline, why can't we go back? Is it because that we are no longer Christian? And is it because we're all gay now? No, we're not all gay. It's not because we're not Christian. It's because the world has changed. Other companies in other countries, in other places, right, can now compete with the Americans. I'll just give you a simple example, guys. I'm sure you know what an iPhone is. I have an iPhone. I like iPhone, but there's like a company called Samsung. It's a Korean company. It's pretty dang good. They make TVs as well. Or you can go back before Samsung. There was a company called Sony that made some pretty good products. Or if you want to talk about cars from Japan, you can talk about like Toyota and Honda. If you're talking about cars from Europe, you can talk about your Porsches or your BMWs or your Mercedes or your Volkswagens or whatever. Point being though is that there's more competition there, right? The Americans don't just dominate everything. And I understand that this might come as a shock to you, but there's other countries out there, and it is tougher for Americans. Now, the other issue as well, and if you want to talk a little about racial politics, because it does matter, it really matters, or talk about gender politics, there was a time when it was harder and very, very difficult for minorities to even vote in the USA, let alone get a decent job. So when some people say, oh yeah, things were so much better in the 1940s and 1950s, well, it depends what color your skin was. It depends if we're talking about being in a segregated school or not, right? We're in a different world where we are now, where there's just more competition because more people have access. I know that upsets a lot of people that some group of people can have access to schools and jobs. I know that's upsetting to a lot of people, but that's just how it is today. Maybe some people want to roll it back to where only certain color of skin people can have a job. I don't want to live in that world, but maybe some people do. And that's sort of what Donald Trump appeals to. He appeals to those people like, hey, what if we only give a certain kind of people jobs? That's the world that I want to live in. And I get that. I get it more than you know. Moreover, there was a period of time in USA where you didn't need a lot of skills to have a decent, well-paying job. It's just how it used to be. Today, you really need to be skilled, okay? So you have a group of people who are supporters of Donald Trump who are unskilled workers. It's just how it is, and I'm trying to say this as kindly as possible, because you can't get a job working at a cannery or so whatever plant and something like that, and expect to make it a really good living these days like you could in the past. It's much harder. You have to get skills. You have to get an education. You need to use different muscles in your mind to get ahead. I'll give you an example of how different it is. I'm talking about, say, I live here in Korea, but if you want to talk about Vietnam, or you want to talk about China, or talk about Japan, I'm using an Asian country example. You can use European countries as well. Actually, it's a fine example. Germany, France, etc. And many countries around the world that are not USA. The school children, if you want to get an upper level job, you have to learn a second language. So in this example, you have to learn English. Some countries in Europe have multiple languages. Someone in France could speak French, Spanish, and English all at the same time. Someone in Germany could speak multiple languages. Maybe they speak Italian, German, and English, whatever. The point is that it may come as a strange thing to you that people in other countries actually have to study just to get a basic office level job. They have to learn a second language. Americans are very spoiled to where they only have to learn one language. Now, there's this sort of culture in USA where people are like, well, I was born American, and I deserve to have a great job, not have any education, not have any skills, and get paid a decent wage. You're competing with everyone around the world these days. It is very, very tough. The other thing is too, and this is also something that not just competing with people around the world, you're also dealing with automation. There are just less jobs than there used to be, or the jobs are in different types of work. So for example, there was a time, and I'm saying when I was a kid, you could be a secretary. And I remember people used to write how many words per minute they could type, right? And there were actually like actual typewriters like that. And so let's say you studied your whole life to be a secretary and how to use a typewriter, and suddenly the computer comes out, word processing, etc. And then after that, even in today's world, now we got like AI, like that whole job profession doesn't really exist anymore, right? The idea of being a secretary in the same way as it would have been in the past. It is now, like, for example, I can just go to my phone and I can dictate on my phone, and my phone can write down all the words, and things are going to change. We're going to need less people to do that kind of stuff. And sort of, guys, I know this is a really hard problem to solve, is how do we retrain workers who've been displaced for any number of reasons? Trump is going to try to promise you that we're going to bring back the factory jobs, but I just don't see it. And I'm sorry to break it to you. It's going backwards. It's nothing to do with, and I know how it is. If you're in certain circles, oh, America's in decline because we don't have Christians anymore. Then that's kind of, some people like then try to enforce religious kind of laws to get back to something that we'll never get back to unless you want to do the Thanos thing and half the population and go back in time and stuff like that. But we're not in that world anymore. The other thing is I understand, if you're following Trump, you say, oh, it's all the Mexicans' fault why I don't have a job. It's all the Chinese fault why I don't have a job. It's always about blaming someone else. And, this is sort of, I try to talk with you every day on the channel, but I just sort of felt like talking about this today. If you want to be competitive in today's world, you always need to be upgrading your skills all of the time, right? Don't just expect to learn to do a job. Let's say you train for 2 weeks, you learn to do whatever job you do, and then just keep that same job forever, and without any additional training. Don't expect that. You always need to be upgrading your skills all of the time, right? The other thing you got to be thinking about too is like building relationships with people. I know there's a lot of people that maybe you go to work, you hate everyone at work, you think everyone at work is against you, you hate your job, etc. Those kind of attitudes isn't going to get you very far. If you want to move up in the working world, you really do have to make friends at work. That's part of the game, unfortunately, whether you like it or not. Because the way that this thing works is like, let's say your coworker goes and gets another job at another company, and that company says, "Hey, do you know anyone who's any good? Do you know anyone that could join us over here? We'll pay them double wherever they were." Your friend or the person because they may not be your friend, they're gonna like refer them to people that they feel comfortable with, or they're going to refer them to people that do a good job. This is sort of why you want to do a good job all the time. Also, too, if you go to that new company, you're going to have to learn new skills, chances are, because it's a new company, these kind of things. The idea that I want you to be thinking about is, are you always growing opposed to blaming? And this is sort of why I'm really against the whole Trump culture of, oh, it's all over someone else's fault. I want to go backwards in time, bring me back my factory jobs, these kind of things. A lot of these jobs, they're gone due to automation. They're gone to maybe that product category doesn't exist anymore in the way that it used to exist, right? We're just in a different world these days. Like, for example, I know on this channel we talk a lot about Tesla, and all these people think that everyone's going to be buying cars forever. Maybe not. Maybe not. Why do I say that? Well, we're in a world now where we can work from home. Most people that I know, and your experience may be different, but most people that I know would rather work from home than having to drive in the office all the time. It's like really a hassle to drive in the office all the time, right? And so, like, if we live in a world where we can work from home and not have to spend a whole bunch of money on a car that goes down in value, why do we expect suddenly everyone's going to buy a whole bunch of cars? Right? I'm just giving you one example. There are new product categories. Before we didn't make these hand phones and these kind of stuff like that, so there was no such thing as like an app store. And so, these days, because I remember when I was a kid, like, if I wanted to buy a computer game, you put it on a floppy disk, put it in the computer. Now these days, people can like do everything digitally and like work for themselves and sell an app for like $1 on the app store and have a big hit. I'm thinking about like a Flappy Bird kind of thing, that sort of thing. So that is a new skill that didn't really exist when I was a kid, that people are able to do that today. So I know, and I know for some people, like, the stuff I'm saying is kind of like, I don't know, hard to take in. There's a lot of stuff to digest, but I want you to understand the position that you're in. It's not necessarily to mean that there's no chance and no hope for you. I'm not saying that at all, but you just have to understand we're in a different part of history, and the people who all dream about going backwards to, another place in time where only certain groups of people could have jobs, or only a certain group of people could have bank accounts. Like, for example, it wasn't until like 1974, I was looking at the year on that. That was when a woman could open a bank account without the permission of her husband. True story. In the 1960s, they could do it by themselves, women that is, but they had to get like the signature permission from their husband. That's how crazy our laws used to be, right? Today, you can go get a bank account if you're a woman, no problem. But we live in a world today. If you're a dude, right? Just being a dude doesn't not guarantee you a job, right? You have to compete with other people. There's a scarcity of good jobs these days, right? And there's a larger population, same way that there's a scarcity of good places to live, right? And there's more people competing for said good places. I try my best every day to educate you guys on sort of what's going on in the world, what's going on in the markets, these kind of things. But today I just sort of wanted to sort of hit on the point of where, and I really know, I understand it completely, this myth that the Trump and those kind of people say, oh, we got to go back to the USA of yesterday. That world doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't. And trying to go back to it is a fool's game, and it's a con game. So do be careful out there what people promise you. And also, too, think about, instead of blaming other people, how can you better yourself? And that's what I challenge you. So do appreciate your time, everyone, and I'll catch you next video.